Good morning, TI community. It's Annika Spar. It's 7:47 a.m. And by the way, it's not just the TI community. Good morning, everyone in general. I wanted to spend a little bit of time today with the word radical. I'm going to start doing it like this because I think it actually is very helpful for us all for focusing purposes. I was blessed enough to spend some time listening to Ramola D's first, I think it's the first interview with alternative media yesterday, and I am incredibly impressed by the level of data command that she and Katherine Horton have. And I am impressed that in such a short period, meaning they've only been targeted for several years or so, that they're acting so diligently, so quickly. That's a beautiful thing. And I thank them for that. I truly do. My concern with some of the stuff that I'm seeing coming um, from some of well, from the overall community so far is this, which is part of being in the programs because I remember it well myself, is this being what I would call a bit too radical. And yes, there is a place in a movement for every single aspect of the movement, without doubt. But, and yes, radical also, spend time with the word, guys, um, implies a very far reaching, sweeping change. And given that these programs are definitively a part of, and I'm going to speak metaphorically here because I don't think anyone has the accurate terminology, and we certainly don't want to use terminology that isn't legally viable, meaning it's just thrown away as a delusion. Um, there's no question that these programs are part of the New World Order agenda, or whatever you want to call it, Agenda 21. I don't know. It's on and on. Here come the planes. It's incredible. He woke me up this morning at 6:30, and I've logged all my reports, and now I'm just going to keep hammering every single day with a report of how many planes, what gets dumped. Oh, and by the way, the most recent chem spraying, bang, spout on, violent weather in, I think it was Mississippi or Alabama. And guess who's our new state attorney general? Yeah, we'll talk about that radical soon. Anyway, radical. So there are parts of every movement and every social consciousness that have to be radical because it's kind of like the front of the boat that's cracking through and breaking up the ice as it moves through ice. And so, but you notice it's a very small fraction of the boat that does that. You want to stay that way, and here's why. It's really clear that the new administration is a part of the this agenda that we all talk about all the time in alternative media and just to try to understand what's happened to our world in terms of chem spraying and the shutdown on alternative and effective and true medicine, the incredible censoring and targeting of valid and true journalists or truth speakers, the death of very, very many, particularly in the past 2 years, exceptional individuals who have tried to come forward to protect humanity and all life on the planet in the variety of disciplines. So, without question, there's room for that, and it's important. But here's the problem with it, and that's why I'm going to ask the TI community to be very careful about supporting or being so integral in the radical side. You want to be spread, and here's why. These, the people who have developed since 1946 and probably much earlier, these programs that have been rolling them out for quite some time. More, the house is shaking. Um, my program started in 1997 for sure, so I've been in mine for 20 years, alternately on and off and accelerated, etc., and de-accelerated. But they have planned for every contingency, and it is only the spirit that they will never truly understand, which is the spirit of freedom and liberty, that will ultimately prevail. But with freedom and liberty comes this enormous responsibility to first do no harm. And so when you're in the radical move of this, again, it's for very specific purposes, but you have to make sure you first do no harm. I know, cracking the ice, I'm doing harm to the ice. I know, it's a conundrum, without question. But you have to ask yourself, and you have to understand and be very careful. Because I can assure you also this, that in their desperation to cover their tracks, to not be completely discovered, to roll out their program as they want, the folks who are the most radical in this movement are going to be the ones that are most subject to capture, final capture too. So you have to be really careful. There's nothing wrong with being ardent. There's nothing wrong with being focused. There's nothing wrong with understanding the data and the programs and being able to put together the evidence for an incredible press packet. Ramola, I'll pitch it, you do that. That's another thing. You have to know who you're going to. You never take a story from an unsolicited source unless you vetted the journalist. It goes on and on and on. And I've done this for class actions in the past against major players. So I know what I'm doing. But so yes, collect the data. Yes, present it. Yes, have it out there. But don't put the entire community in harm's way by perhaps making it out to be more radical than it is. I have found the majority of people with whom I speak are really amazing, beautiful, highly ascended souls already. I was living total bliss when they really came after me. I must have been beaming, but I always was, so that's kind of, but still. So yes, I know this. And I understand also the need to aggressively pursue something, but vast and sweeping change comes one step at a time. And I only say this because I have learned great patience in 20 years of surviving, 20 attempts on my life, several bouts of cancer, a heart attack induced by directed energy weapons, a 6'4" fellow hired to take me out. I'm not gonna, it's absurd. And the people who have the power to actually truly help you are not going to align with the radical. It's not going to happen. I suppose if you find some lawyer who wants to actually work for nothing and battle up, but let's look at Julian Assange for a moment, and let's look at Chelsea Manning and Edward Snowden. Here are three individuals who we could probably say were fairly radical. Julian for sure has historically gone balls out. Edward's much more circumspect, much more conservative, much more disciplined. But he also went very balls out. And then finally we have Chelsea Manning, who, working with Julian Assange, went very out. And where are they today? I'm not trying to dissuade us from incredible focus and determination. I'm trying to say that the powers that be know that this is coming already. They've run the games on it, and so they're prepared. So let us be as centrist as possible in number, because mathematically that's what's going to prevail. And let us not put one TI in serious danger of programs that seem to be coming. I mean, Jeff Sessions as State Attorney General of our country. And if anybody thinks that Donald Trump is actually the savior, he's the 777, well, maybe he is. Maybe he is. Maybe he's going to have this incredible conversion. But you know what? He's the only male in my entire life, and meeting him within 1 minute of knowing him at the Taj Mahal in Jersey City, being introduced by a dear friend of his, did something inappropriate to my body. The only male, and I have met many people in many countries over 57 years. 2, about this administration. Why do you think all these billionaires are being pulled in? Do you really think that what's being done to all of these life protection organizations, governmental or not, all of these educational organizations, governmental or not, funded or not, it's a joke. We have plenty of funding. Take it away from the military that's been paroling the world for 70 years. Really, please? No, I didn't consent to 65 cents of my dollar going to the military for all my life. No, I didn't. And I want that money back, by the way. Thank you. So if you really think that, and I'm what's called because of the mathematical genius thing, I have that automatic knowing, whatever that is. And if you are seeing billionaires coming into power, the greatest accumulation of Wall Street characters in the history of any administration coming into this an accumulation, and the breakdown of the last vestiges of basic social services and basic tax right benefits. When we sign off on that Social Security number here in the United States, we are signing off on an agreement, a contract. The contract is, I'm going to pay my taxes to you, and you're going to give me these things. Our government has not been giving us these things forever. We are a failing democracy right now. Failing democracy. And we are nowhere near social democracies. And I don't want to hear the stories about socialism. That's all ridiculous speak to ensure that the agenda goes through. It's ridiculous how successful our very right-wing government and military industrial, I haven't had my coffee yet, intelligent complex has been, and how well they have steered us into disaster. So please, 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 and I'm not saying Obama was better. I'm not saying any Democrat was better. I'm not saying that Hillary, I'm not saying. What I'm saying is we now have the most aggressive version of the end of America that we've seen. And I've done enough research over a long period of time. And because I had to know what was going on in the world on Wall Street and did extensive research on countries, governments, people, places, things, events, I'm telling you, we have to be careful here. And we have to work in a way that allows the folks in power to save us. Now, if there's not been any response from Donald Trump's office, since the letter that Ramola's group sent in, which was on the 25th, I understand. Today's the 9th. That's not a good sign. And if someone's not following up with these letters, not following up, not first calling people, finding out where the letter goes, who's going to receive it, what kind of conversation is open, then it's useless to send the letters because it's ridiculous. You're never going to get anything done. But it needs to be followed up on. But back to radical. The letter, in my personal opinion, was radical. And yes, of course, we want to get the information out there. And of course, we want to get these travesties brought to the attention of as many non-geo entities and human beings as possible. Of course we do. However, all I'm going to say is that if you're doing things that prevent a larger awareness because of the level of its radicalness. I'm sorry, guys. I just started having coffee. You're going to have really diminished results. That's kind of how it works. And it doesn't matter the credentials of the people signing on it. That doesn't matter. Credentials mean nothing to these people. what these people who run these programs and who are really the fathers of them work with is to cover their criminal bots as much as possible, and to work with the people who can quarterback this movement into a place where the programs are cleaned up as much as possible, until they collapse. Because ultimately, as a closed system, it collapses. It's not going to sustain. It's unsustainable long term. So, and I ask once again that anybody who is approaching anyone who's writing, who's an advocate and an activist, and particularly the word activist, be very careful, because that puts you immediately on a list. So anybody who aligns with the more aggressive kinds of movements, just look at the history of our country. That edge of the boat is always terminated. I'm not saying that will continue, but I take a very prudent stance. I try to protect people's lives. I try to protect their possessions. I try to protect this movement. That's who I am. I'm very careful after monitoring what was done to me now very aggressively since early 2011, and having successfully maneuvered through these institutions and with these individuals in a way that was actually helpful for everyone and actually did contribute true change to the world and the sector in which I was working. So I don't mean to be critical, but I want people to spend some time with the word radical, and I want you to really understand that, yes, it's beautiful to want that kind of sweeping change, to have that vast outreach, but that's great for an activist organization over here. That's great. However, for the majority of TIs, it puts them in a very potentially compromised position, and one in which they could be even more highly targeted. Because I know since I started working on this around the 18th, seriously, of January, I've been targeted off the map. I mean, it's shocking. And then I just got my disability thing blown up again, but we'll get that done. They have a really big problem now, monumental actually. I'm thinking what probably happened is I made the phone call on the 31st to the local office, and it was intercepted, or it was surveilled, and then whoever decided, oh, she's got those documents. Oh my God, she got through to a non-sociopath. She got the documents. Bing, put it in, reject it. I'm pretty sure that's what happened, because that's kind of how it's working now in my life. And we want the whole community to be in that space where where the perpetration is isolated to a very narrow group of very severely sociopathic individuals, and pretty much everyone else has been neutralized, because then we just focus in on that group, and that means your energy, your efforts are incredibly focused, and they're not radical because the majority of people who are executing these programs aren't radical. They're just misinformed. They're scared. They're waking up, but they have been asleep for a long time, and they're very toxic. So they don't even know truly what's going on. And for those of us who do, it's incumbent upon us as true leaders of like this awakening to really shepherd them well and not to put them in harm's way. And again, there is a place for radical, but you don't want to place anyone in harm's way. You can't, because and because the radical end of movements never ultimately get the true change done. They crack that ice. Again, there is a place for it, but you have to be careful, because I have watched, and here's my final, I'm way long here, sorry. I have watched now for pretty much since 2008, for 8 years, psych ops be run on the world, particularly the New Age movement and the truth movement, where it's there's, and not the entire one, of course. There are many people in these sectors of evolutionary growth that are true. But I've watched a lot of false leaders. I've watched a lot of false directions, a lot of disinformation, a lot of shuck and jive, a lot of, oh, we're working, but we can't get anything done. And that's because it's not because it can't be done. It's not because no one's responding. It's not because it's really humid here today. It's not it's because of a lack of unity, too much radical, not enough taking the new data and making it palatable to the center of anybody so that they can actually bring it out in a way that has wider scope but isn't quite as inflammatory or radical. You have to get, this is like a spectrum thing. Consciousness of in any kind of evolutionary period is a spectrum thing. And so there, of course, is a need for all points. However, in terms of preserving people's human, civil, and constitutional rights, it's imperative that they don't get too radical. We've seen Julian Assange's, look at them, Julian, Edward, and Chelsea. Where are they? Where are they? Nowhere. Julian's attorneys are dead. Some of the best human rights attorneys in the world, who we would have used, they're gone for a reason. So let's spend time with the word radical, understand exactly what that means, and be able to determine when we encounter forces that are radical, and join them only in support of their specific part of the mission, but not for wide and vast movement. You know, when I acted against Wall Street with these women, one of the things that I learned very quickly was that it was the centrist that was going to actually be able to institute change with these behemoths, and they are. You think the military? They are the military-industrial complex. You cannot imagine. But they respect people who don't attack them. They respect people who come to them and say, you know, you're making a very large error here. And these are the consequences. Not only are you writing huge checks and are you having your reputation dinged, but you're actually ending up having lower profitability, on and on and on, losing market share. And of course, in the case of the company that we legally addressed in a class action in 1997, they ended up falling flat on their face and being taken over by Bank of America because they were so corrupted. So use your power and your knowledge is what I'm saying, to be the centrist, to awaken as many people as possible, as non-violently as possible, because also finally, this is so long, I'm sorry, finally, in natural organic systems of creation and evolution, that's exactly how it works. There's always that period of like violent change where there's, it's a state change. It's a literal, like suddenly like the organism, the entity, the form is going to make a major change, and there is great volatility and radical activity in the energy constructs of that moment. Absolutely. But that's a moment, because after that, they'll still see an enormous amount of activity, and astrophysicists can address this. But it'll get calmer, because ultimately in organic systems, the principle is harmony. The principle is first do no harm. The principle is non-trauma. So that's enough of me today. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for the continued UN letters. As I said, I'm working mostly on class council right now and getting the UN letters by next Friday out to a specific contact in that office. And If anyone has any questions or any queries, please reach me at Annie, A-N-I, Kaspar, K-A-S-P-A-R, @gmail.com, or ring me at 941-356-8007. If you have problems speaking with me, it's most probably because the folks that run my program don't want me to hear your story. And that means your story must be really beneficial. Because I've noticed I noticed exactly how the interception occurs and with whom, and I've made some notes on it. So don't be deterred. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful Thursday, everyone.